Hi, and welcome back to Ian Make Stuff. I'm Ian, and I continue to make stuff. Thanks again, Dark Age Creations. Now getting back to the build, the first thing we're going to have to correct is, as mentioned, the length of the body. Now, I've decided that the length that I really want is about 12.5 inches. That's going to go from mid-chest to just below my navel. The thing about that is that I'm going to have to find the width of the plates that I need. They're obviously right now the wrong length, or the wrong overlap. I've decided that I'm going to keep the overlap of 1 inch, but I'm going to shorten down the plates. In order to find the correct width of the plates that I'm going to want, I would normally use Photoshop and make a crude model and just use the rulers on there. But in order to save some time, and if I want to do this in the future, I'm going to need a mathematical formula that'll help me just plunk in the correct variables and give me the numbers I need. Unfortunately, despite pushing my limited abilities with math, I couldn't figure it out. Conveniently, I do have a couple of friends who do know the arcane arts of mathematics and calculus. They were able to give me this formula. L is the total length of the piece that I need. T is the number of plates. S is the size of plates. And O equals the amount of overlap between the plates. Using this formula, I've determined that my plates will need to be about 2 3/4 inches wide with that 1 inch overlap. So the next step is going to be taking all of this back over to Pickering Woodworks and cutting down the plates to size. First thing I gotta do once I get to the shop, however, is disassemble everything and clean off all the tape goo. Little acetone takes everything right off. I was a little worried the acetone might eat up that plastic, but I turned out to be wrong about that, and everything was fine. Now that everything is cleaned up, what I want to do is cut everything down to the aforementioned 2 3/4 inches. To do that, I'm going to use a piece of wood that I've measured out to the correct size. Just use that as a reference guide and as a straight edge. So those are all cut out now, and while that was a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be, story of my life, it wasn't really that bad. What happened was that when we heat formed those earlier to make those arches, it actually caused this plastic to shrink in certain spots, and kind of random spots too, wherever the heat was the highest, I guess. That ended up causing me to have the problem where none of my straight edges that I cut before were straight anymore. So when I tried to put that template of wood down there, I didn't have a single straight edge that I could reference to. So I ended up having to cut twice as many times as I had initially planned. Honestly, not the biggest problem in the grand scheme of things, and it was pretty easy to overcome, just kind of annoying. Next thing we're going to have to do is take them to the belt sander and just give them a little bit of a smoothing over, and also probably just put those radiuses back into those corners where I've cut them in. Then after that, we have to drill the holes into the plastic so we can put our anchors for the straps that are going to hold the whole thing together. For now, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to sand down the edges. I'm going to measure out those holes and drill them in. So, like I said, just a quick pass by the belt sander just to clean off those new edges and to put the radiuses back in those corners that were created. But I want to talk to you about these lames here. What's going to happen is, because these are all the same length but they're scallops on top of each other, they don't actually line up anymore. So what I want to do is line them up at the front end with the clamp and just mark from there where those holes are going to have to line up. That's where the straps are going to be, and we of course want them to line up properly. The back edge later on, once we put everything together, we'll cut off and make those all nice and straight. I'm going to use a center punch just to mark out where all the straps are going to go. And of course over to the drill press where we're going to drill the holes where the rivets are going to go that will hold the straps in. It is now several weeks later. Unfortunately, due to some obligations with work and my theater stuff, I had to take a little bit of time off from the project itself. And also there was a bit of a heat wave, so I am now just getting back to the shop. So the next thing we're going to do is start putting the straps on the inside now. I think the last thing you saw was me drilling a bunch of holes into the plastic, so I've measured those out and I've decided where I'm going to put them all. I've decided the length and all that stuff. I did all the plates, all the lames for the torso, all the pauldrons, all of the I guess you'd call that part the gorget. I think that's what I'd call that in the past. All the stuff that goes on the chest is all the holes have been drilled out. Keeping in mind for the all the straps, as well as for the little buckles that go across and some of the ties that keep the whole thing together. One of the other things I did that I'm not sure I put to camera was some of the tools that I had made. This is just a piece of plastic, but I scribed a couple of lines on it so I would know where center was and the distance that I'd need, so that I could just kind of register it to the edge of the plastic, pop the holes where I needed to go, and use a center punch to mark those out, and they'll all be relatively uniform. And I have them set for a couple different distances. I have this one here. I don't remember what they actually are off the top of my head right now. The different size holes don't really mean anything. I just realized after I drilled them that I needed to only mark for make the holes for the center punch, and not necessarily for the actual size of the hole. So that's actually the size of the hole that I'm going to be making later on. That's a 3/16 hole for a 3/16 rivet. But I didn't really need to make the hole that big, just big enough for the center punch. This little doohickey here, which is what I'm going to be using to put the holes into my webbing. I'll show you how that works in a little bit, but basically the leather, the strap goes into the here. I close that on top. It goes to a point here so I know what the distance is, and I use a soldering iron, press through those holes to make a couple of uniform holes. We're going to start doing burning those holes into the nylon now. So first thing I got to do is measure out the length of nylon that I need. I've already decided that the distance between one hole in one lame and the one hole in the other is going to be just shy of 2 inches. That's going to be 1 inch and 3/4. Did I say 1 inch 3/4? Maybe it was 1 inch and 3/4. All right, I was right the first time. So let's get to it. I'll try not to bore you with making you watch the whole thing, but I will show you the first couple so you have an idea of what I was doing.
Well, pretty simply, all I did was put the webbing into the jig, burn a couple holes into it with soldering iron, bring those 2 holes down to the line I'd drawn, and repeating it. Once I finished burning in the holes, I clipped the webbing into the lames using 2-part rivets. Typically I use these for leather work, but here I'm just using them to temporarily hold the project together as I build it. I could just as well have used a bunch of small bolts, but these were already handy and super easy to snap in.
So I spent a couple of days making all those straps and clipping them to the armor. As I mentioned before, those little rivets were super temporary. I just wanted to put them in there to make sure everything fits correctly and make sure everything looks good. And as you can see, things are looking pretty good. Now, I'm not going to set those rivets permanently yet because I still have a bunch of work to do on the hardware for the laces, the hinges, the little decorative bosses, and all that crap. It's all going to need to be painted, as will all the plates, and that's going to be a whole lot easier if I can do it in a disassembled state. But we're going to start looking at all that on the next video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give the video a like, and while I can't guarantee another video is coming anytime soon, because apparently I can't make a schedule and stick to it, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you will get a heads up next time I do make a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time when I make some more stuff.